All right, there's been a big CRISPR breakthrough. 65-year-old man named Patrick Doherty was suffering with a disease in which his protein was misshapen, building up in his body, destroying important tissues such as nerves in his hands and feet. He watched the same disease kill his dad, and here's the quote, had watched others get crippled and die, difficult deaths from this disease. And it's a terrible prognosis. He entered a trial utilizing CRISPR, the gene editing tool, and researchers reported the data indicating that the experiment treatment worked well. The study Doherty volunteered for is the first in which doctors are simply infusing the gene editor directly into patients and letting it find its own way to the right gene in the right cells, in this case, the cells in the liver, making the destructive protein. The advance is being held not just for amyloidosis patients, but also as a proof of concept that CRISPR could be used to treat many other much more common diseases. It's a new way of using the innovative technology. Chamath, thoughts?
I think this is a really important breakthrough. And what it allows us to do now is see a world where, look, if you think about the two different paths of the following idea, you're going to make a solution to a problem. If the problem was an internet company, or you wanted to make a product, what you would do is you would go to Amazon Web Services. You'd be able to consume a whole set of abstractions. And then you would build a light amount of programming, which was essentially like the application logic of your app, right? I think a lot of people listening understand that idea because that's what they do. Here, what we're getting to a place is now soon we're going to be able to view biological problems in the same way. So we're building all these small little building, I don't want to call them small, but building these very important building blocks that is very much akin to the building blocks we needed to put together the first set of computers, to put together MS-DOS. All of that allowed us to create Windows. Windows allowed us to actually access the internet. And there was this in seriatim development of things that happened. And I think that we're on the verge of that. And that's what these kinds of breakthroughs really show us, which is that you can view. So for example, in a different company, they've created these mRNA gate arrays, logic gate arrays. So if you're, a chip designer, you would understand how to basically create electrical function in part using, gate arrays. But if you reduce a biological function to the same idea, now that same person has a translational ability to solve a different problem that they didn't have before. So I think what we're saying is that we're seeing this platformization, this AWSification of a biological toolchain with things like CRISPR and all of the other modalities that need to stack on top of it so that the next person can view it as a programming problem. And I think that that's a really exciting path that accelerates a lot of this development. But this was an enormously important breakthrough because it validated a lot of what CRISPR was beyond a lot of theoretical innovation that up until now was basically what it was known for. And a lot of investment had gone into companies that were trying to do things, but this was the first really important one. The funny thing about Intellia is that it's been public for like 7-8 years, and it's just been toiling. And then, the last little while, obviously, it's gone absolutely crazy because of this breakthrough.
Yeah, and in related news, CRISPR creates its first genetically modified marsupials after years of using the gene editing technique, CRISPR, to genetically modify everything from vegetables to lab rodents. Researchers have used it to edit one of the hardest targets yet, marsupials, the MIT Technology reports. I guess it turns out they're very hard to edit, and we're now editing marsupials and changing things like their hair color. So, brave new world. Freeberg was here. The Freeberg ratio would be off the charts. All right, wrapping up, we have...
Pretty incredible. Just one thing to add to that. I mean, I think what it shows is that these COVID vaccines are just the first product, the first breakthrough product of this mRNA technology. There's going to be a lot more. And what I wonder about is, this category of vaccine hesitant people, they're kind of like, in the technology world, you have kind of a spectrum of early adopters, late adopters, Luddites, people are actively against technology. Yeah, well, I mean, Luddites are even
laggards and then Luddites, yeah.
Yeah, Luddites are even more violently opposed. I think the original Luddites, I think the original Luddites were in England. They lost their jobs at some factory, and so they broke into the factory with sledgehammers to destroy all the machines that had replaced their jobs. So There's clearly a spectrum. And what I wonder about is that if you're on sort of the Luddite end of the spectrum with respect to biotechnology, I mean, are you going to have a materially worse life because you're not getting the benefits of all these vaccines and all these treatments? And I mean, COVID could just be the first example of this.
Well, I mean, if you build on it, it's sort of like we're going to create a two-class society. One that is not only dealing with all the maladies and cancers and living longer, but we haven't even started to think about, well, taking somebody who's already in great health and what can you do for them? So, oh, you know what? You can be 2 inches taller. You could add 10 IQ points. You could run faster. You could have higher blood oxygen, whatever. I mean, we could genetically modify people to stay underwater for 10 minutes and be, better processors of oxygen like other mammals are. You could have superhumans. I mean, that's basically where this is going. And that unlocks a whole nother level of ethical and moral considerations. But you're right. There could be a group of people who are like, I don't want to touch any of this. And they die at 60, 70, 80 years old. And then we got another class of people who embrace this and they have 20 more IQ points and they live to 120. No, I mean, it sounds funny, and like science fiction, but that is in the realm of possibility in our lifetimes.
There's a lot of great science fiction written about this whole sort of transhumanist idea. A book series I really like is Nexus by Ramez Nam, who actually was a developer at Microsoft and then became a writer. And he writes with, I'd say, a high degree of sort of accuracy and specificity about these technologies and how they might evolve. People should be sure to check out that book.
Jason, be honest. If you could actually increase anything in your body through this gene editing, what would it be? Just throw anything out there. But the first thing that comes to mind.
Anything out there?
Anything
I
out
would
there,
increase my muscle mass 100%. Increase my muscle mass.
By the way, there's a
percentage of fat would go down, not in reality in absolute terms, but just in percentages.
So this CRISPR thing was a public company called Intellia Therapeutics. But I want to throw a shout out to another startup that seemingly, I think, may have had a breakthrough this week called Form Energy. And the reason why these guys are interesting is that they've built this incredibly massive, long duration battery out of iron. Now, why is that important? We have really simple ways of harvesting iron from the earth. It is literally everywhere. Everywhere you look, iron exists. It's not so true for nickel. It's not true for cobalt. It's not true for manganese. It's not true for lithium. It's not true for all of these other specialty chemicals that we need in order to build batteries. But these guys have solved a very complicated technical challenge that'll allow you to store energy cheaply, which has huge implications for electricity and grids. And so big shout out to these guys at Form, because if it looks like what they said they did is true, it's a really important breakthrough that'll have some important ramifications. It's amazing, by the way, to see progress. No, you wake up and you read these things and you're just like, God, this is incredible that there are people working away on shit that really matters.